There are no facts, only interpretations. Friedrich Nietzsche. Bending, Not Breaking, the Dragon Prince Edition. Book 2, Episode 5, Breaking the Seal. Welcome back to Bending Not Breaking. This is Ben Pruitt, your host, and I am so excited because today we are being blessed by the presence of a guest. And this guest has been with us before on The Dragon Prince, and he was gracious enough to come back and join us. Friends, family, listeners, Jason Simpson, the voice of Viren, is back. Jason, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well. That was quite an intro. I feel blessed by that, and it's really wonderful to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we are able to make this structure work for the podcast. We're going between seasons of Korra, and then in the off time, as we set up for the next season, I'm able to do this. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a cool thing that we get to invest in the Dragon Prince because it is a phenomenal show. I mean, clearly we're spending a lot of time with it, right?
Right.
Well, cool. So tell me, give me one big life update since the last time our listeners have heard from you, which is like a year ago. So give me a big life update other than, COVID happening.
Well, I mean, still working, which is great, working through COVID. I've got my home studio, so I work here. I do a lot of teaching. Dragon Prince is coming back, of course. So putting some time into that. The creators have been teasing stuff that they've been working on. So, I can't say anything about anything.
Sure.
But I can say that they are working on it, and I'm part of the they. And yeah, that's the things that people will be interested in. Otherwise, I'm really boring.
Boring is fine. We are boring. All yeah. Right? We are humans are boring. It's only the Instagram phenomena that pretends otherwise, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
For sure.
So as far as updates go, some things I'm working on that I can't really talk about until they get released, but
for sure.
Yeah, still working, so I'm happy about that, and my kids are happy and healthy, so pretty much everything's good.
That's awesome. I think my biggest life update is that I got a massive haircut. I had 4 pounds of hair via beard and hair and chopped it all off a week or two ago.
It's a good looking head of hair though. So
thank you.
Enjoy it while you have it. You may have it the rest of your life, of course. But as a guy who thought he would and now don't, really embrace that hair.
Well, that's a good perspective to take. And I think perspective, I want to lift that word up specifically because we're talking about perspective today as our lens. And I kind of want to lean on you for a little bit and get your what's some life perspective or a story about perspective from your life that you can kind of share with us so that we can learn a little bit more about what perspective is from your perspective.
Well, when I teach a lot of voiceover. So I teach a lot of voiceover students, actors, people who are just starting. And I see the same sort of approach that I had when I was very, very young being an actor, thinking, I grew up in a little tiny prairie town, basically, one province over, very small. But I wanted to be an actor. I knew that from a very early age, 6 to 9-ish. I knew that's when I knew I wanted to be an actor. And my thought was, I have to move to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because that's where actors go.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no clue how to get there. And I remember being quite young thinking, there's no way I can do that. That's a dream. That's a pipe dream. Fast forward 30 plus years later, and I'm sort of living that dream. I still have things I want to accomplish in my career, but I realized that once I put it in perspective, the hustle that I had to put in, it's not about that location that everyone looks at Hollywood. And that's where everything happens. But as I teach more, I hear people through the years going, "Well, I really got to get down to LA and I got to get my career going." And I hear that excitement, but I also see this angst in these new
Yeah.
actors, and I think, listen, if this kid from the prairies can be here doing this, I'm on a hit show and I'm on an Emmy-winning hit cartoon, and I just live in a comfortable, quiet little suburb outside of Vancouver, and I have a family and I do my job, and I would love to be working more, but look what I'm doing. I'm so
Yeah.
excited about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to go to Hollywood. And so I see that kind of skewed perspective because it just comes from some ignorance. But in the
Yeah.
nicest sense. So, I tell these people this and they go, okay, so I can get to where I want to go from where I am. And absolutely you can. Doesn't mean you won't go there,
Yeah.
but it's all about the hustle and putting those things in perspective.
That's really fascinating to hear that, because it sounds like from a very early age there was this narrative that a lot of people buy into, that when you didn't have more information you bought into it as well.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting how our perspectives are limited by our information,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I'm hearing from your story, is that when I have an incomplete narrative, when I have an incomplete set of information, my brain is going to complete the story based off the information that I have, which leads to this anxiety around having to move across the country to achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah. Move to a different country.
Exactly. For for a lot of people it's moving like across the world or to a different country, which is just
And not just
fascinating.
that, but it's finger quotes Hollywood.
Yes.
Uh, and that's just that's the impossible dream.
Yeah.
Only certain people get to move to Hollywood and work. I've been to Hollywood many times, and it's no big deal. In
Yeah.
fact, when I'm there, it's lovely, but I can't wait to come home.
Yeah, lovely is a strong word. I don't know that that's how I would describe it.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, as soon as I said it, I thought, I'm just pandering to people who live there.
Yeah.
There's places in Hollywood that are lovely, folks. So, but
This is
otherwise, it's
in.
like, no, this is not a place I would want to live.
Yeah.
uh,
Crowded.
Crowded and a lot of fakeness. And anyway, I'm generalizing, but yeah.
That's so cool though to hear this, because I bet that feels so liberating, right?
Oh,
We're so constricted by these narratives, by these perspectives, that all of a sudden, like when we get information that frees us from it, it's like a burden off of our shoulders.
when I first started working, my agent said to me, "Hey, I've got this commercial voiceover gig for you." And this is when I was really first started. And I had thought I would be a film and television actor and somehow figure out how to do voice work
Yeah.
in LA. And that literally opened the door in my mind. I went, I can do voice work here? Well, of course I can. Yeah, of course. And I knew about studios and I knew about voice actors. I was trained by a couple of them, but it didn't really click until I got in the booth and I went, I can do this here?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I'm, working on commercials and cartoons and video games, and that whole thing just disappeared like a whole bunch of smoke. The truth was
Mhm.
it's here for me to do it, and I don't have to go down there, and it's a lot closer than you think it is, folks.
That's
Just
awesome.
I don't want to say just apply yourself. There's an awful lot of work and
Yeah.
timing and luck, but it's available.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. I'm interested to kind of dive into these themes that we're talking about via this episode, because there's a lot of lessons to be learned about perspective in this one too, in this episode. So let before we dive in, hold on.
Yeah.
We almost got away with not having to do the hard part, which is
Okay.
the 30-second recap, which is, man, let me tell you, I'm not great at it. But
You're not great at it. Okay.
Yours was great.
Oh,
It was awesome. I laughed out loud. It was, funny. It was great. 30 seconds. It's tough. But good news is we can make it work. So here's the deal. Do you want to go first or do
no.
you want to go second?
Okay, no, I'll go. Okay, all right. Okay, I'll go first.
First means you get to like blame it on not having it fresh. If you go second, you already had a recap for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, I'll go first.
All right, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, on your mark, get set, go.
Okay, so Viren calls a meeting of the Pentarchy. He arrives on a horse. He looks super badass. He jumps off the horse. They're like, "Give us your weapons." He's got the map across his back. It looks like a samurai sword. He just looks really super cool. Anyway, the Pentarchy's gathered. He's got to convince them to join him to attack Zadia. Meanwhile, on a ship somewhere, some idiot kids are floating around with a really cool pirate, and he's blind.
5
Back
seconds.
to Viren. Back to Viren in the group. He's really got to convince them, but that's where the story ends. You got to go to the next episode.
And that's it. There it is right there.
So bad.
Oh, it's so good though. It's so good. That's what makes these good is that they're tough. I to this day, we have not got one listener to send in a 30-second recap. And they can like delete it and restart it and delete it and restart it until they get it perfect. And I haven't had one send a funny one in yet. And so I'm waiting. Listeners, remember, you can send in a 30-second recap. We will play it on the episode.
That'd be awesome. Please do.
Yeah, especially for an upcoming episode. That'd be super neat.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. So my turn.
Yeah, stop stalling.
Right. Yeah, sorry. I gotta do what I gotta do. All right, here we go. On my mark. Get set. Go. Okay, so Viren shares scary vision of Zadia to Pentarchy after getting his mansplaining butt kicked by Queen Anya, and then Callum broods and Ezra naps on a ship, and then Anya's convinced, and there's a flashback with Harrow and Sarai, and then the rulers of Durin seek help from Catullus, and then Harrow says yes, and then Viren's worried about resources, and Bait feels lonely and joins Callum, and then Viren researches Magma Titan, and then, Sarai, like, she's against killing it, and then Viren's like, no, he's kind of jealous of Sarai's
5 seconds.
And then Callum's finally begins to break the seal of flashback, and the gang breaks metaphorical seal with the Titan.
Wow, that's really good. You got a lot of info in there. The whole Titan thing, and wow.
It does. I do a lot better when I prepare.
Sure, yeah. Not just watching and going, I got this.
Yeah, you forget so much.
Yeah.
But it's part of the fun is that you just start throwing things around and hopefully it's part of the episode.
I don't think I mentioned no, I didn't even mention the journey to the Magma Titan once. So yeah, very good.
That's why we do it twice. You get some, I get some, we get everything.
Yeah.
And by everything, I mean big points.
Some things. Yeah.
Okay, so perspective, like what's a moment for you? What's a moment of perspective that you noticed in this episode that was brought to your attention after diving in and rewatching?
Well, I think part of this, I felt like it was cheating a little bit, having rewatched it after I'd seen everything today.
Yeah.
So it's hard to have a fresh perspective when I know what's going to happen.
For sure.
But hearing some of the lines, and I'm gonna defer to Viren a lot here, of course, because these are two of my favorite episodes that we recorded. I love the storytelling, and it does deal a lot with perspective and hindsight. And when we go forward to season 3, we go, oh, Viren talked about this.
Yeah.
So the perspective really is, some of my favorite lines are talking about, when he closed his eyes, I see fire raining down, death and destruction everywhere.
I wrote that down.
Dragons, and I think that he's telling a really big, fantastical story, and it's there to grip people, but that's prophecy. There's some truth there. So perspective, though, I struggled with, I don't know if it was perspective so much as putting this grand story, this epic adventure that they took to get the Magma Titan and trying to boil it down to like the human effort and the human aspect of it when, they can I spoil things? We're
For
at that
season
stage.
3, yeah, we do spoilers for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, just the fact that these three strong, beautiful human beings die in the effort to save, so, hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
So, does that put things in perspective for me? I guess it does. It's an old story.
It's interesting how this being told alongside like what will be next episode in terms of perspective, like with Harrow's story alongside this, with in terms of Callum's letter that's
That's
coming.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
With this, that whole like interplay is really interesting to get how history, when we know of it, and depending on what side of it we learn, can drastically affect how we see the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because for the Pentarchy here, they are hearing this fantastical story of dragons and assassins and all these things. And 4 of them are like, sure, we'll do whatever. They're kind of pushovers. And then Anya's like, not convinced. And then Viren dives into this story, right? So he is like master tactician in terms of communicating and connecting with people.
Right.
It's fascinating to watch because this tack didn't work. He is so adept that he can switch moves, take a left turn, and say, let me tell you a story here because I want you to see it from my perspective. And here's where my question is, and you might be able to help me with this. How much can we trust this flashback if it is all from Viren's perspective?
Right. Right. That's a very good question. I've been asked that more times than I can remember. Truthfully, it's is Viren telling the truth here? Yeah. How I don't want to answer this with here's what actually happened.
Yeah, here's no definitive answer.
But how much can we trust? Going by what we know from Viren from seasons 1 up to the middle of season 2, versus what we know from middle of season 2 to end of season 3 right now. I think those are 2 different Virens to deal with. But
for sure.
If we were just up to this point, there's some shady stuff going down with Viren.
Right? There is.
So I don't think the viewer can actually say, "Oh, this is all 100% truth." And what's so great is what I love is showing we can hear Sarai's last breath and Viren saying, "I was there."
But you can't see it.
But you can't see it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just sitting here going like, yeah.
But it sounds so intimate and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then we see later and we go, what is he doing? What's going on?
Exactly.
So yeah. To answer your question plainly, which I should have done right off the bat, no, I don't think you can trust necessarily anyone in that position to be telling the truth, because you're right. He is a master at what he does, which means he can be very manipulative.
Right. And it's one of those things where when we are using the skeleton of the truth and we are only shifting a few of the details, it's really hard to parse out what is fact from fiction, right? And from a storytelling perspective, it's one of those things where my buddy Sunshine, who I co-host the Avatar portion of the podcast with, he is so good at hyperbolizing points for the sake of the story, where the story is like bare bones true, but he like just alters it enough to where it's like a really good story. And it's one of those things where like he does it without even thinking, because that's just that's the way he does things in order to kind of make it funnier or whatever the goal of the story is. And I'm sitting here going like, I don't know about that. It's just like but it's true enough to where you can't really call it out. And I wonder,
see there, it's true enough,
right? That's
which
exactly.
means there's
I
something
didn't.
that isn't true. Yeah.
Well, it's lie of omission, really. It's wording it in such a way that I don't have to share this portion of the truth. And I think that that is a massive thing to think about in terms of perspective taking, especially for however old Anya is, to be like, I don't have all the information I need to make a good decision here. Whereas everybody else is like, yeah, sounds scary. Let's move on.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm curious, can we talk about Anya for a second? Because
Yeah.
you got your butt whipped here.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, okay, here's my question. I think I mentioned it in the recap. So Viren is what I dub mansplaining to Anya, and it seems like he's he's from an older generation. There's literal child learning about war. We're about to talk about death and destruction, and I can there's a lot of things I can say that would like back Viren up here.
Sure.
And I also am really curious because when she goes on this line and says, well, it seems like I'm a queen without an adult and you are adult without a crown, right? And tell, like, from you when you were living into Viren's lines in this scene, what
Right.
was his perspective? Was it that was he underestimating her? Was he underestimating children? Was he underestimating the fact that she was not only a child but also a woman? Like, what are the assumptions at play as he kind of navigates this scene, for at least in your kind of mind?
Yeah. I always wanted to approach Viren as the smartest guy in the room,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not. He's not always the smartest guy. But it's very cool as the actor to go, yeah, my character is like really smart. He's the smart guy. Everyone thinks he's evil, but really he's got this plan. But he's not always the smartest guy in the room. He may think he is, though.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, this is very interesting because I thought we've got to be careful and not assume that everyone else, the other adults, the three other members they're not dummies.
Sure.
They're in the positions they're in for a certain reason. And, they've got history. They understand war, maybe war tactics. They understand, but at the same time, they hold Viren in a high regard, because Katalis is what it is, and he is who he is. So they went with it, but she sees through that because she doesn't have all of that stuff, the years of that, and having children, watching them listen to me about things, they take that all in. They go, "Huh, yeah, yeah, yeah." But as they got older, they could become more discerning, and you can see your
Absolutely.
kids. You can see the wheels turning in as they're thinking about what you said. So if you lie to them, or if I lie to them, if I tell them in a joking way, I tell them a lie or something, or I try to be funny, and they're like, "You're lying, Dad."
Mm.
You do this thing, or you make this face, or whatever it is. So I thought it was wonderful to see that she maybe doesn't see through what he's saying, because like you said, he's a tactician and he's trying to use hyperbole, and she kind of just sees that there's an untruth there somewhere, or she's not getting the whole story.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, I have, like, you talking about this is lifting up something for me. I worked with kids, campers, in so ages like 5 all the way to 18 for
yeah.
quite a while, about 20 years now, and I guess 15 years. And anyway, that's beside the point. What I've come to realize is that when adults often will, preach values and then not follow them
Oh
themselves.
yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
preached values versus practiced values. And what that does is it really shapes perspective for children, because what they see is what they hear is different from what they see. And what I think what we're describing with Anya and with your children is where all of a sudden we're starting to have enough perspective to see the difference and see that people are saying that this is a good thing and not actually following through with it. And that's causing some cognitive dissonance. And the problem is, in our culture, it seems like it is always a problem when we are called out by a younger generation because they're like saying, this isn't right. You said this. And then all of a sudden we're like, no, but here's this law that says otherwise because we're, white men in power who are instituting laws for people. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of controversy because people are being called out for not practicing what they are preaching. And it's just interesting to hear about how children have that unique perspective compared to older, like age, right? Wisdom is not always better.
And sometimes it does manifest itself in a younger person. Just they say something, or they have there's a wisdom to something they say. I don't know if that's actually true. Is wisdom actually age-based?
I don't know.
Right? Do you have to have experience to be wise, or can you be an 8-year-old who says something, or a 12-year-old who says something, and everyone goes, "That's very wise." Even my 18-year-old doesn't know those words.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we underestimate children, and that I think that comes to bite us in the butt a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So moving to this moment, and you already talked about this, like when I close my eyes, I see fire. I'm curious about this because the storytelling technique here, he could have just told this story, but instead he's like, here's also some like theater, or
Yeah,
he's like using his magic to like give these visuals that are like, you see a picture of Rayla, in the daylight, and then you see these like shadow red-eyed elves that are like monstrous, and it's just interesting because it's that kind of perspective that really incites fear in other people. And so I'm curious, where is the line between when we start to believe the lies that we're telling? And I'm curious about Viren's perspective here. So when he closes his eyes and sees fire, is he actually seeing fire, and is he buying into this narrative that he's sharing and telling, or not? Or is this like masterfully aware that this is stretching?
I think my personal opinion is that he knows what can happen.
Yeah.
He knows that perhaps their kingdom can be overtaken. I don't think he wakes up in a cold sweat seeing dragons raining down on them. But he knows that to paint that picture, people, everyone will be susceptible, because here's this very powerful dark mage who says, "I bring you warning. I've had visions.
Yeah.
Here's what it looks like." And there's dragons, and there's elves and fire, and everyone goes, "Ah, this is what he sees. We better believe him." But I think inside it's okay. Next step of the plan.
Interesting.
Pull the curtain on this one and scare them. No, I don't think he legitimately sees what he said he sees, but it's certainly using it as a tactic. He knows that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If they're not careful, but
it's one of those things where it's like, it's certainly possible, but the way, if we like, only by doing this can we counteract it, when really there are a lot of ways to potentially avoid that and so it's just interesting.
Sure.
When we believe there's only one way, or this is the best way, what we're willing to do to get other people on board.
But I mean, what's more powerful? I'm pretty sure, guys, that if we're not careful, we're going to be overrun by elves and dragons will decimate us. Or I have had a vision. Dragons raining fire down on us. Elves attacking, cutting our throats, stealing our children.
Well, honestly,
the second one's going to affect people more.
I'd say at large, right? But for me, one of the things I think about, like, what is more compelling in terms of getting a group of leaders who are not in actual danger at this point? What is more compelling in terms of a logical argument, right? Do I want to convince you by making you scared, or do I want you to buy into this without being scared, knowing that you'll be more committed later? That's my perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if Viren would have been more successful and would have been able to convince Anya if he had gone about it by not trying to scare her into it, you know? Because I hear you that the mass
Yeah.
populace is 100% gonna be more uh, likely to act when you hear the raining fire and terrorism, per spiel versus, hey, this is likely. We should prepare for this,
But
right?
he did change tactics, though, right?
True.
He had that whole face squeeze, and then you can see him thinking. He goes, "Can I tell you a story?"
Yeah. It's like, let me exasperated, like.
So he did away with the drama and the fire show and all the lights, and he said, "Here's a story that you'll connect with, and hopefully this changes your mind, because I'm talking specifically about your parents."
Yeah.
And of course, as we know, oh wait, I don't want to jump the gun. On next episode.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to keep on going here, but tap into something that you said at the beginning about, like, one of the things that Viren is really leaning into in his rhetoric is what's the phrase? Common humanity. Is that what he says? Yeah, we must join together to protect our common humanity.
Right.
And this is the end of his speech. And what I find really interesting, that I want to compare this to Sarai in the flashback, is Viren sees the humanity in humans alone, whereas Sarai sees the humanity in this magma titan and in sentient beings. And she goes into this sparring match with Harrow and is saying, is it sentient? Does it think? Is it the last of its kind? And just goes on this like series of questions that shows that she is thinking about what one might call humanity of this quote monster. And I find it interesting because when we start to see the humanity in non-human, all of a sudden, I wonder what happens to humanity. Like, how does our perspective shift when we start to value the humanity in things other than human? Does that make sense?
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I of course see that, and I have a great deal of, I don't know if you can have a great deal of respect for a cartoon character, but what Sarai represents, I certainly do.
Absolutely.
Um,
It's a big question.
I know, yeah, I know that it's, I think that she sums up very quickly
Yeah.
um how we all should feel, and probably most people do. But at the same time, I look at what Viren has to say, and can I cut through some of that and say, well, this is also just as important for us. It does leave certain things out in the cold, like addressing these questions. Is it a sentient being? Does it have a family? And really, I think, his bottom line is, who cares? I can save hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
But if you put that toward another human being, if I murder this human being, is that going to save a whole bunch of people? That becomes a heavier question immediately, of course, as it should. But would that change Viren's mind? I don't know that it would. And I think we've seen that.
Yeah. I
Right.
find it really interesting because the act of dehumanization is what leads mankind to war.
Right.
Right. It also is what leads to genocide. It's one of the signs of impending and upcoming genocide is
Yeah.
when we start to dehumanize and call, quote, the other side, start calling them names. Right. And what this reminds me of is, so I've been in school. I just finished, thank goodness, with my first year.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of the concept of the imago Dei, which is the image of God, which
Right.
is seen in human beings. But when we start to kind of re-envision the imago Dei, and what if we saw, you know, the Imago Dei in more than mankind. And I think that's what Sarai is doing here. And that's showing a moral efficacy that is different than Viren's, right? And I guess an example, there's a quote from a circus advertisement from I think 1846. I want to read. This is Susan Nance's Entertaining Elephants. In the beginning of the world, as we are taught by the Holy Scriptures, God said unto man, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I surrender to thee control. And thou shalt have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowls of the air, and over everything that moveth upon the earth shalt thou have dominion. And then goes on to say that it was intended by his wisdom that he, unto whom he had confided so much, should become acquainted and familiar with the subjects over which he should exercise his rule. Hence, it became necessary that man should study the history of animated nature, making himself master of a science on which his own happiness depended. And so what that goes to is when we start to treat elephants and things like that, and all of these creatures that are in the circus and whipping them and ruling over them, when we start to kind of pervert the Imago Dei and remove the image of God in these animals, we are able to treat them poorly.
Yeah.
And we have learned over time that the circus is not humane. That's the language we use, right? And so I find it really interesting that I'm like seeing this in Sarai, where we're able to see the quote image of God or humanity, if you will, in people and in elves and in even magma titans. But Viren is capitalizing on not seeing that and trying actively to prioritize humanity over. And so it seems like this is exactly what this kind of deal is, where what would it be like if we started to change our perspective and value the grief of our ecosystem and losing our ozone and losing animals and losing all these things, the equivalent of losing our humanity.
Yeah. Humanity and morality.
Yeah, exactly.
And one thing I find interesting is that we see this waffling, and maybe it's not a waffling, maybe it's a two sides of the same coin. Harrow saying, I will do what it takes to help Durin, and we will share in their suffering. And then the flip side is, who cares if this creature is what it is? Who knows if it's sentient? Who knows if it has a family? It will save hundreds of thousands of people. And it's like,
where's the line?
Where is that line? Yeah, it gets very blurry because Sarai's on one side and Viren's on the other, and Harrow just sort of, I don't want to say waffle is probably a bad word, but he's not very clear. But maybe in his mind, or the way he was written, those are two different things.
Yeah.
Beast that doesn't do anything for them but save people,
yeah,
if they use it, versus we need to stop many people from dying by sharing in their grief and sharing in some of their death, but less people will die.
I think a lot of people, if not most people, would argue that 100,000 lives is likely worth a magma titan. But I think what the questions that Sarai was asking of, like, what about how is it affecting the ecosystem? What happens if we take out this magma titan and all of a sudden it completely shifts an entire part of the continent that we just don't know about? And so anyway, that's kind of big questions but it's interesting that Sarai is asking them because we don't see that very often.
No, I like it. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So in terms of, I want to kind of venture over to the boat away from Viren for a second.
Yeah, sure.
So Callum is all up in his feelings, right?
All up in there.
And he is losing, by opening this letter, he views that he is losing Harrow for real, because after he reads the last word, there's nothing more. Yeah. Potentially, maybe, we'll see. Nothing more. And I find that perspective to be really interesting, and I'm curious, how do we feel about that perspective from Callum about like, oh, this is the last one, last words?
Well, I mean, I hold on to that kind of stuff really tightly, really dearly, actually.
Mhm.
And the idea of if I read something that someone I love wrote to me and they're gone, this is the last surprise. This is the last thing that they will have said to me. And then yeah, well, just parroting what you just said. Uh, and then that feels devastating, and it feels like great loss on top of an already tangible loss. Right? Oh, this person has died. I know that, and I go through that, and then here's this thing that they've written to me, and I can hear their voice in my head, and anything past this will be me remembering what they've said or me putting words in their mouth that didn't actually happen, but I
Yeah.
can hear their voice saying. So to me, that's very heartbreaking, and I, and from a production side, Jack did an absolutely fantastic job conveying, the words that were written for him, and that
Absolutely.
just sucks me in because just working with Jack is great, but hearing him, perform that and hearing Callum say those things, yeah, I get a little
Right.
yeah.
And so, like, what I love about the all of the titles for the episodes are like really spot on, because there's always like four meanings to the title.
Sure.
And for this one, breaking the seal, I find it really compelling to kind of think about, because there are multiple seals that are being broken in this episode. And I find it really the juxtaposition, I guess not that's probably the wrong word, but the parallel of Amaya hammering down on the magma titan at the end, just as Callum is breaking the seal,
Yeah.
is, metaphorical in the sense of Sarai talking about what this concept of a slippery slope. And I'm really interested to hear about that, because the breaking the seal on the envelope makes, like, that's a pretty literal meaning here, but breaking the seal by like tapping into this dark magic with the magma titan seems like a whole nother seal. And Sarai describes it as it's a slippery slope. And the slippery slope logic is kind of like it's not real, right? There is no, like, you can do one and then not keep going. But the argument is that once you do it, it's just easier to keep doing more and more and more. And I'm curious about your perspective on slippery slope logic, as well as breaking the seal in this moment, impact it had on the future.
The slippery slope logic, that's something I've not really thought about. I definitely love where you're going with that. As far as breaking the seal goes, I did actually have this thought of, you can still not do this. You can
Yeah.
still back out of this. If you break that seal on that letter, you don't have to read that. You can put it in a drawer. It's
Right.
broken, but man, you stick that spear in that thing's chest, it is game on, and you can't stop and go, okay, well, you know what? Never mind. We've changed our mind. It's coming for you.
Yeah.
So once that seal is broken, you've got your hands full and you can't change your mind. But Callum doesn't have to move forward with reading the letter, but it's, of course, he has to.
Yeah.
He has to, because his dad told him to. His dad wants him to do that. It's his own fear saying, I'm afraid to do this because then I'll lose him forever.
Yeah.
But a slippery slope.
Well, it's a logical fallacy, like to say, well, that's a slippery slope, because it's assuming that people are going to continue to make the decision after they make it once.
Right. Yes, right.
And with the foresight that we have, or at least for me through season 3, and for you potentially through longer, with that foresight, we know that that slippery slope is like, yep, it was slippery. Like,
We're sliding.
and we slipped, right? But using that as an argument is a logical fallacy, because it assumes that people are going to slip, rather than
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
you know and so I agree with her. It is a slippery slope, and we can't assume that people, like, using that as an argument assumes the worst rather than assumes the best.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about choices and ramifications, and Sarai saying this is potentially wrong, and how do we, but she's the one who, throws the death blow
Right.
eventually that kills this thing. And is her just joining them? Well, eventually her joining them leads to her own death. And is that considered no, that's something different. But wow, that is
Well,
a deep thought.
right. Well, it's interesting because like logical fallacies are like we buy into them until we know what they are,
Until, yes.
right? Until we can understand why it's a logical fallacy. But
Yeah.
until then, we buy into it. And it's interesting to see how Viren weaves in like logical fallacies into his rhetoric on top of, being a masterful storyteller, but having these random like if we do, it's like creating false binaries, right? Saying, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen no matter what. So it's either you're with me or you're against me. And it's that kind of false binary. No, like actually I can be with you and against you. And that's what we see Sarai do again. She does that with Harrow, right? And she says, hey, I disagree with you, but I'm still going to stand by you.
Yeah.
And it's just really beautiful because I think I'm so like bought into Sarai being like queen of awesome.
Yes, me too. Me too. Um, I love that line though. That is one of my favorite lines of the show. I've got a couple, but I also love that how that it not transcends, but it really shifts to this argument or belief that I've talked with so many people about over the years now, between Viren and Harrow's relationship,
Mm,
using dark magic and not to maintain the security and the safety of their kingdom. I disagree with you, but we are side by side on this, and
yeah.
eventually we get to the I am the king, you are a servant of the kingdom, and we get that butting of heads, and there's that power. It's not even a power shift. He is in power,
Yeah.
but that fact that I disagree with what you want to do, but go ahead and do it because you know that it's going to work, and I trust you, but I disagree with it. And I
Yeah.
think that's interesting to see that shift to Harrow and his wife.
I find the metaphor for me that I've been thinking about and mulling over as I watched was comparing dark magic to fossil fuels in the sense
Ah,
of, like, oh, it's a slippery slope. Once we start doing this, then all of a sudden it's like we're never going to be able to stop. And what we're seeing is that no, there are other options. We
right.
have very viable options. But the problem is there's so much money wrapped up in fossil fuels that convincing people to change, or rather convincing corporations to change, is really difficult. And I wonder if that's the allure of capitalism, right? That is convincing. And so the metaphor of like dark magic being, the nebulous like lure of capitalism and social cultural, like this is our only option.
Hmm.
This is the option, when really it's like solar energy. It's like, and so there. It's just I find it really interesting to kind of think about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you have any other big moments from the show before we kind of take a short musical interlude and then come on back with our Lens MVP and our gratitude?
Oh, there's so many things we could talk about, but no,
Right.
let's move forward.
Let's move forward. All right, you heard it, folks. We're going to take a short musical interlude, and we'll be back momentarily in your ears. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us and staying with us. Uh, Jason is still with us, and we are moving into our Lens MVP. And this, remember, everybody, is the award we are nominating a character for. That means they did the lens best, which, again, today is perspective. So, Jason,
Yes, Ben.
who is your nominee for the Lens MVP and why?
It is Sarai.
All right. Okay.
Because uh I love that she's a grounding. She's like a grounding rod for
Mm,
me for certain. Again, I have a certain bias towards things. I don't necessarily have to, but I do. But I love her perspective on what's about to happen or what should or shouldn't happen.
yeah.
And when it does, she's still there. And I know that she feels a certain way, but she is fully in it with her husband, and things change
Yeah.
quickly for them, but she is still engaged 100%. But we still know what her perspective is. She does not flip flop. She has to act to save her immediate family, the people there, but there's also the greater picture. This is a very vague way of putting this, but I appreciate and I recognize, or it her perspective on the whole thing is what I um agree with the most. I think
Yeah.
agree with it. It resonates in me the most.
I
Your
feel
thoughts on it?
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you heard it, folks. We have Jason's nomination is Queen Sarai for very valid and great reasons. My nomination is Queen Anya. And
Ah,
I think, in terms of perspective, one of the things that I really value is that when people hear, I really value calm. And calm looks like taking a deep breath and saying, I am undecided, and being comfortable in that, not having all the information and not having to make a decision. Because in a world where we are so pressured to be certain and have the answer,
mhm.
for someone as young as she is to come in and be potentially uncomfortable in that indecision, but courageous enough to live in that perspective and not shy away from it is just, it's unreal, and it's wisdom beyond my age. So so
Right.
I'm nominating her for the Lens MVP because I think due to her age she wins over Sarai. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, very good.
So
Yeah.
when this episode, the day this episode releases, we're going to try and release a Twitter poll and say, who do you vote for among the nominees? And we're going to see who wins.
Oh, that's
Man,
great.
who made a better argument? Was it me or was it Jason? That's all I'm
Oh, not based on the characters' choices, but on our arguments. Oh, wow.
saying. I'm just trying to shift their perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to win here.
You are a far better orator and argumenter than I am.
Yeah, debatable, but it's okay. Okay, which brings us to our final segment for this episode, which is gratitude. Gratitude, phenomenal attitude, but a better practice. So we want to practice this because it helps lift up some joy in us. We talked about joy earlier this season. I think, oh, that was last episode. We talked about joy. So joy is pretty great. And we know
Yeah.
it's gratitude. So, all right, Viren, Jason, either one, who are you most grateful for in this episode?
Well, it has almost nothing to do with what we've been talking about,
Totally
but
fine.
maybe it does. I I l- I think I'm grateful for Harrow
Mm,
and just what he has to say to his son and the content of that. I mean, that's a deep. It's so deep, and there's so many levels. You are not my birth son, but I love you as though you were, and even though I'm now dead,
oh,
I want to. I need to impart upon you wisdom and love, especially love.
Yeah.
Wisdom he can read in a book, he can read on the paper, but to know that he needs Callum to know that he loves him very much. And man, again, I just go back to my own personal life. I always just want my kids, no matter what mistakes I make, I want my kids to always know that I love them. I want the best for them. So that uh, that strikes a big chord in me.
Yeah, we'll dive into that a little sneak peek for next episode. I'm sure that we will dive into that little speech that he
did I jump the gun there?
Well, the speech is in next episode, but
right.
grappling with the letter is like the fact that he left this letter is very good reason. Like all of those things are true.
Yeah.
The fact that he was able to leave this letter, right?
I appreciate you trying to cover up my mistake. I totally jumped into the second episode there, the 6th episode. Yeah.
No worries. But I mean, and they're really tied up together anyway, because it's all the same flashback. Anyway, okay. So grateful for Harrow leaving a incredible letter behind. And I think for me, I'm grateful for Callum and specifically for this moment with Bait, where like Bait is turned away from Ezran unintentionally. He gets swatted away while Ezran is sleeping. At least I think it's unintentional. And Bait is like, I'm being like replaced by this dragon, and I'm no longer and you can just see this story play out through his color and through his grunting. And it's just, he goes down to like try and hang out with Callum instead. And Callum is in his pain and was like, get away from me. And then Bait's like also in his pain and is like, well, like no one loves me. And then the moment I'm grateful for is that Callum's able to step out of that and welcome Bait back. And he's able to, like, that level of compassion to be able to like sit in that darkness with Bait and realize, okay, I can do something about this. That speaks to Callum's character more than like anything else in this episode, or really many other moments in the season. So I found that really to be an awesome moment.
Yeah, when he calls out to him and Bait's on the stairs and he just sort of turns back.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Gorgeous. It's a gorgeous scene.
That's really nice.
Okay, so I have wonderful news, everyone. You can follow us at BNB_pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have our new Bending Not Breaking Facebook group is open to everyone now. It used to be closed, but now it's just open to anyone who's interested. You have to answer the questions to get in. That's all I'm saying. That's like the only requirement, answer the questions. But other than that, Jason, if you want people to find you, where can they find you on the social medias?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at symbol at a boy Simpson, at a boy Simpson. So, and on Instagram at Simpstagrams.
Yeah, excellent. So the other good news is that Jason has agreed to step in for this upcoming episode 2. So you'll hear his voice again next week, because we wanted to really do due diligence to these 2 episodes, and they're his favorite in this season. So really exciting.
In the series so far.
Ooh, even better.
Yeah.
Well, this will be fun then. Well, everyone, we're glad you're here. Thanks for listening. And Jason.
Yes.
We'll see you next week.
I can't wait. I'm going to sit here the entire week and wait.
All right. Until next time, everybody, be well and do good.